The phone call came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. My father's voice cracked through the speaker, barely holding together. Maya, your brother Alex was in an accident. The doctors say it's bad, really bad. You need to come home now. My hand shook as I gripped the phone. Alex was only 22, fresh out of college, full of dreams. The drive from Chicago to our small town in Ohio would take 4 hours. I threw clothes into a bag, my heart pounding. At work, I'd been managing the Peterson account launch, our biggest project this quarter. But family comes first, always. I called my boss, Stephanie Clark, as I rushed to my car. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I left a message explaining the emergency, saying I'd be out for a few days. The highway stretched endlessly ahead of me, every mile feeling like torture as I raced toward the hospital where my little brother lay fighting for his life. When I finally reached the hospital, the sight of my parents broke my heart. Mom sat hunched in a plastic chair, her face streaked with tears. Dad paced the hallway, his usually strong shoulders sagging with worry. Alex had been driving home from his girlfriend's place when a drunk driver ran a red light. The impact was devastating. Broken ribs, internal bleeding, traumatic brain injury. The doctor spoke in careful, measured tones about the next 72 hours being critical. I held Mom's hand as we waited, whispering prayers I hadn't said since childhood. Around noon, my phone buzzed with an angry text from Stephanie. "Where are you? The Peterson presentation is tomorrow. This is completely unprofessional." I stared at the message in disbelief. How could she be worried about a presentation when my brother might die? I quickly typed back, explaining again about the accident, but her response was immediate and cold. "Family emergencies don't excuse abandoning your responsibilities. Get back here now." I couldn't believe what I was reading. Stephanie knew I'd never missed a deadline, never called in sick without good reason. I'd worked weekends, stayed late countless nights, even came in with the flu last winter because she said the team needed me. But now, when my family needed me the most, she was treating me like some slacker, making excuses. I showed the text to Mom, who gasped. "What kind of person talks to someone like that during a family crisis?" she whispered. I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that I wasn't leaving Alex's side, not when the doctors weren't sure he'd make it through the night. I typed back one more message. "My brother is in critical condition. I cannot leave right now." Her response came within minutes. "If you're not here by tomorrow morning, consider your job in jeopardy. The company won't tolerate this level of irresponsibility." I turned off my phone and focused on what really mattered. Alex needed me, and I would be there no matter what. The next 48 hours blurred together in a haze of coffee, prayers, and constant fear. Alex's condition was touch and go. One moment the monitors would show improvement, the next his vitals would drop and nurses would rush in. I barely left the hospital, catching fragments of sleep in the waiting room chair. My phone stayed off. I couldn't bear to see whatever messages Stephanie was sending. On Thursday morning, Alex finally opened his eyes and squeezed my hand. The relief was overwhelming. The doctor said he was out of immediate danger, though recovery would be long. That's when I finally turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls from work. Dozens of increasingly angry texts from Stephanie. The last one, sent at midnight, was the worst. "Your unprofessional behavior has damaged client relationships and put the entire project at risk. We'll discuss your future with this company when you decide to show up." My hands trembled as I read her words. This woman had no idea what my family was going through, and she didn't care. That weekend, I made a decision that would change everything. I started updating my resume. If this company valued presentations over people, if my boss saw family emergencies as mere inconveniences, then I didn't want to work here anymore. I began applying for jobs, reaching out to my professional network. The responses were immediate and encouraging. Several companies wanted interviews right away. It seemed the business world was full of employers who actually understood that employees were human beings with lives outside the office. My anger at Stephanie was transforming into something more powerful, determination to find a workplace that treated people with respect. Within 2 weeks, I had 3 job offers. Each one offered better pay, better benefits, and most importantly, managers who spoke about work-life balance like it actually mattered. I chose Morrison and Associates, a marketing firm across town known for its positive culture. During my interview, when I mentioned needing time off for family emergencies, the hiring manager nodded understandingly. "Family comes first," she said simply. "We believe employees who feel supported at home do their best work at the office." It was everything I'd hoped to hear from Stephanie, but never did. I gave my 2 weeks notice on a Tuesday morning. Stephanie's face went through several emotions when she read my resignation letter. Surprise, annoyance, then what looked like panic. "You can't leave right now," she said, suddenly sounding less authoritative. "The Peterson account needs continuity. I'll consider removing the written warning from your file." Too late, too late. I'd already seen her true colors, and they were ugly. My last day couldn't come fast enough. My final 2 weeks at the old company were awkward but liberating. Stephanie alternated between trying to convince me to stay and making snide comments about my disloyalty. Coworkers started approaching me privately, asking about my new job, sharing their own frustrations with the toxic environment. It became clear that Stephanie's harsh management style was affecting everyone, not just me. On my last day, I cleaned out my desk while she watched from her office doorway. "You'll regret this decision," she called out as I headed for the elevator with my box of belongings. I turned back and smiled. "The only thing I regret is not leaving sooner." The elevator doors closed on her shocked expression. As I walked out of the building for the last time, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was free from her cruelty, her impossible expectations, her complete lack of empathy. Starting Monday, I'd be working somewhere that actually valued human decency. The future had never looked brighter. Morrison and Associates was everything I'd hoped for and more. My new manager, Patricia, greeted me with a warm smile and a welcome basket filled with local treats. The office buzzed with positive energy. People actually seemed happy to be there. During my first week, a coworker had a dentist appointment and simply told her team she'd be back after lunch. No drama, no guilt trips, no written warnings. It was refreshing to see a workplace that trusted its employees to balance their responsibilities. Patricia checked in with me regularly, not to micromanage, but to ensure I had everything I needed to succeed. When I mentioned that Alex was still recovering and might need help with physical therapy appointments, she immediately offered flexibility in my schedule. We're all human. Life happens, and we support each other through it. The contrast with my old job was striking. Here, I wasn't walking on eggshells, constantly afraid of making Stephanie angry. I could focus on doing good work without fear of unreasonable reactions to normal life situations. Alex's recovery was slow but steady. The physical therapy was helping, though he still struggled with some cognitive issues from the brain injury. I was able to attend several of his appointments, something that would have been impossible under Stephanie's regime. My new job not only allowed for this flexibility, but encouraged it. Patricia often asked about Alex's progress, showing genuine concern for my family. This human approach to management was revolutionary after years of Stephanie's cold indifference. Meanwhile, I heard troubling reports from former coworkers still trapped at my old company. Stephanie had become even more demanding after my departure, apparently taking her frustration out on the remaining staff. 3 more people had quit in the 2 months since I left, leaving the team severely understaffed. The Peterson account, which she'd claimed was so critical, ended up being lost anyway due to poor service and missed deadlines. It seemed her harsh tactics weren't just cruel, they were also ineffective at achieving business results. 6 months into my new job, I received an unexpected call from Tom, a former coworker from my old company. His voice was strained as he explained the situation. "Maya, you won't believe what's happening here. Stephanie denied Jerry's request for bereavement leave when his father died, said the department was too busy and he could attend the funeral on Saturday if he made up the work time. I was horrified, but not surprised. This was the same woman who'd threatened my job while my brother lay in intensive care. Tom continued, "People are talking about filing complaints with HR. Some are even mentioning your situation as another example of her heartless behavior." It was surreal to think that my experience was now part of a larger pattern being recognized and documented. Jerry had been with the company for 15 years, one of their most loyal employees. If Stephanie was treating him this way, no one was safe from her cruelty. The seeds of her downfall were being planted by her own actions, and I hadn't even needed to do anything but survive and move on. The reports from my old workplace grew increasingly disturbing. Stephanie had denied sick leave to an employee with pneumonia, forced someone to work during their honeymoon because of a critical project that wasn't actually urgent, and publicly humiliated a team member who'd asked to leave early for their child's school play. Each story made me more grateful for my escape and more convinced that karma was preparing something special for my former boss. At Morrison & Associates, I was thriving. My first major campaign exceeded expectations, earning praise from both the client and senior management. Patricia recommended me for a leadership development program, something that would have been unthinkable under Stephanie's reign. When I mentioned this achievement to my parents during one of Alex's therapy sessions, Mom smiled knowingly. "Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best opportunities," she said. "If Stephanie hadn't been so awful, you might never have found this wonderful new job." She was right. In trying to punish me for caring about my family, Stephanie had actually pushed me toward a much better situation. A year after leaving, I learned that my old department was losing talent at an unimaginable rate. Of the 12 people who'd been there when I left, only 4 remained. The constant turnover was creating chaos, with clients complaining about lack of continuity and missed deadlines. Stephanie was reportedly working 16-hour days trying to cover for the missing staff, but her abrasive personality made it nearly impossible to recruit replacements. Word had spread through the industry about the toxic culture at that company, particularly in her department. Professional networks are smaller than people think, and Stephanie's reputation for cruelty was becoming widely known. Meanwhile, my career was soaring. I'd been promoted to senior account manager and was leading a team of talented, happy employees who appreciated working in a supportive environment. The contrast couldn't have been starker. While Stephanie's world was collapsing under the weight of her own negativity, mine was expanding with new opportunities and genuine professional relationships built on mutual respect. 18 months after my departure, the news I'd been unconsciously waiting for finally came. Tom called with barely contained excitement in his voice. "Maya, you'll never guess what happened. Corporate HR is conducting a full investigation into Stephanie's management practices. Apparently, the CEO received anonymous complaints from multiple employees, both current and former." My heart raced as he continued. "They're interviewing everyone who's worked under her in the past 3 years. Your name came up several times as an example of her inappropriate behavior during family emergencies." I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. Vindication because finally, someone in authority was taking her cruelty seriously. Sadness because it had taken so long and affected so many people before action was taken. "Are you going to participate if they contact you?" Tom asked. I didn't hesitate. If sharing my experience can help prevent other people from going through what I did, absolutely. The truth had a way of surfacing eventually, and Stephanie's years of treating employees like disposable objects were finally catching up to her. The call from corporate HR came 2 days later. The investigator was professional but thorough, asking detailed questions about my experience with Stephanie during Alex's accident. I recounted everything: her immediate anger about my absence, her threatening text while I sat in the hospital, her complete lack of compassion when I returned, and the written warning that ultimately pushed me to leave. "This aligns with other accounts we've received," the investigator noted. "Would you be willing to provide copies of any documentation from that period?" I still had Stephanie's cruel text messages saved on my phone, screenshots I'd taken in disbelief at her heartlessness. Sharing them felt cathartic, like finally being able to tell the truth to someone who had the power to do something about it. The investigator thanked me for my time and honesty, mentioning that my account was particularly valuable because it demonstrated a clear pattern of inappropriate behavior during employee emergencies. Justice was finally beginning to take shape. While the investigation continued, life at Morrison & Associates kept getting better. I was selected to lead a major client presentation that could bring in millions in new business. Patricia had such confidence in my abilities that she gave me complete creative control over the campaign. This level of trust was something I'd never experienced under Stephanie's micromanagement. The presentation was a huge success, resulting in the largest contract in the company's history. As I stood before the celebrating team, I thought about how different my life might have been if I'd stayed in that toxic environment. Stephanie's cruelty had been intended to break me down, but instead it had freed me to discover my true potential. Meanwhile, updates from my old company painted an increasingly grim picture. The department was down to just 2 original employees, client satisfaction scores were plummeting, and rumors suggested that major organizational changes were coming. The investigation was taking its time, but the writing was on the wall. 2 years to the day after Alex's accident, I received the call I'd been waiting for. Tom's voice was jubilant as he delivered the news. "Maya, you'll never guess what happened. Corporate HR is terminating Stephanie this morning, effective immediately. Security escorted her out while she screamed about lawsuits and unfair treatment." The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who'd showed no mercy to employees facing genuine crises was now crying about unfair treatment when facing the consequences of her actions. Corporate issued a statement about renewed commitment to employee well-being and respectful workplace practices. Tom continued, "They're bringing in a completely new management team and offering counseling services for anyone affected by the previous toxic environment." I felt a profound sense of closure, not because I wanted revenge, but because justice had finally been served. Other employees would be spared the cruelty I'd endured. Future family emergencies would be met with compassion, not threats. Stephanie's reign of terror was over, ended not by outside forces, but by the natural consequences of her own heartless behavior. The aftermath of Stephanie's termination was swift and decisive. The company immediately began damage control, reaching out to former employees who'd left during her tenure and offering them positions in the restructured department. Several people accepted, drawn back by promises of better leadership and the absence of the toxic manager who'd driven them away. I declined their offer politely. Morrison & Associates had become my professional home, and I had no desire to return to a place associated with such painful memories. However, I was glad to see the company taking responsibility for the hostile environment they'd allowed to fester. Within weeks, I heard that morale in my old department had dramatically improved. People were smiling again, staying late by choice rather than fear, and actually enjoying their work. The contrast with Stephanie's final months, when the office had felt like a prison, was remarkable. It reinforced my belief that leadership style has a profound impact on every aspect of workplace culture. As news of Stephanie's firing spread through professional networks, I began receiving unexpected messages. Former coworkers thanked me for speaking up during the investigation, crediting my testimony with helping build the case against her. Some shared their own stories of her cruelty that I'd never heard before. The pattern was always the same. Employees in vulnerable situations met with coldness and threats instead of support and understanding. One message particularly moved me. It was from Alex, who was now fully recovered and working at a nonprofit helping other accident victims. He wrote, "I know what happened at your old job after my accident." He wrote, "I want you to know that your boss's cruelty led to something good. You standing up to her helped protect other families from going through what we did." His words brought tears to my eyes. In her attempt to punish me for prioritizing family, Stephanie had inadvertently created a champion for workplace compassion. The ripple effects of her cruelty had ultimately made the professional world a little bit kinder. 3 months after Stephanie's departure, I ran into her at a professional conference. The encounter was awkward and telling. She looked tired, older somehow, and was clearly between jobs. When she saw me, her expression cycled through embarrassment, anger, and something that might have been regret. "Maya," she said stiffly, approaching with obvious reluctance. "I heard you're doing well at Morrison." I nodded politely, refusing to engage in whatever drama she might be preparing. "Look," she continued, lowering her voice, "about what happened with your brother's accident, maybe I was too harsh. The job market is tough right now, and I could use a good reference." The audacity was breathtaking. After 2 years of consequences for her behavior, she still didn't seem to understand the fundamental problem with how she'd treated people. I looked at her calmly and said, "I hope you find what you're looking for, Stephanie. Good luck." Then I walked away, leaving her standing alone in the crowded conference hall. That brief encounter with Stephanie confirmed what I'd suspected. She still didn't truly understand the impact of her actions. Even facing professional consequences, she framed her cruelty as being too harsh rather than fundamentally wrong. It reinforced my decision to focus on building something positive rather than dwelling on past hurts. At Morrison and Associates, I was now managing a team of 8 people, each one talented and motivated. We'd developed a culture of mutual support, where family emergencies were met with immediate offers of help rather than threats and punishment. When one of my team members had to rush to the hospital for her daughter's appendicitis, the entire group rallied to cover her responsibilities without complaint. "This is how it should be," she told me tearfully when she returned the next day. "People supporting people." I smiled, thinking of how far I'd come from those dark days when Stephanie had made me choose between career and family. Now I was in a position to ensure others never faced that impossible choice. The fourth quarter of my second year at Morrison brought unexpected recognition. I was nominated for an industry award recognizing innovative campaign leadership and positive workplace culture development. The nomination highlighted not just the successful campaigns I'd led, but the way I'd fostered an environment where creativity flourished because people felt safe and supported. Standing on the stage at the awards ceremony, looking out at an audience of peers and colleagues, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Stephanie's cruelty during Alex's crisis had been devastating at the time, but it had ultimately revealed my own strength and values. Her attempt to diminish me had instead clarified who I wanted to be as a professional and as a leader. The award itself was gratifying, but the real prize was knowing that my team members went home each day feeling valued and respected. In trying to break me down, Stephanie had inadvertently helped me build something beautiful. As my story spread through professional circles, I began receiving invitations to speak at conferences and workshops about creating compassionate workplace cultures. Each presentation felt like a way to honor the pain of those dark days while preventing others from experiencing similar cruelty. I always told the complete story: the late-night hospital vigil, Stephanie's heartless response, the fear of losing my career during a family crisis, and the ultimate resolution through finding a better environment. Audiences responded with recognition and gratitude, sharing their own experiences with toxic managers and supportive leaders. The message was always the same: businesses that treat employees as whole human beings don't just do the right thing morally, they also achieve better results. Turnover drops, productivity increases, and loyalty flourishes when people feel genuinely cared for. Stephanie's example served as a cautionary tale about the real costs of prioritizing short-term demands over long-term relationship building. Her legacy had become a lesson in how not to lead. 5 years after Alex's accident, I accepted a position as Director of Human Resources at Morrison & Associates, specifically tasked with ensuring our compassionate culture scaled as the company grew. My first initiative was developing clear policies around family emergencies and personal crises, ensuring that no employee would ever face the choice I'd been forced to make. The guidelines were simple but revolutionary. Family comes first, managers are trained to respond with immediate support, and no one is ever penalized for prioritizing a loved one's well-being. During the policy rollout, I shared my own story with the leadership team, explaining how one manager's cruelty had almost destroyed my career while another's kindness had launched it to new heights. The room was silent as I finished, then filled with determined voices, committing to be the kind of leaders who build people up rather than tear them down. Looking around that conference room, I felt a deep sense of purpose. Stephanie's attempt to punish me for loving my family had ultimately led to policies that would protect countless families in the future. Today, as I write this story, Alex is thriving in his career helping accident victims. Patricia has become both my mentor and dear friend, and I wake up each morning excited about the positive impact I can make